Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead. Joining us today is Dr. Darrin Karcher and Brittney Emmert of Purdue University, and they have recently completed an evaluation of a novel new lighting system for layer houses. It's called Pulsed Alternating Wavelength System, quite the mouthful there, or PAWS, PAWS. And they looked at if the system improves the growth rate of birds, decreased the age at first egg, and decreased aggressiveness and nervous behaviors. So welcome, Darrin. Welcome, Brittney. So nice to have you with us today.
Thanks for having us.
I want to remind all of you that are joining us, if you have any questions for our guest, please post our guests. There's two. Please post them in the chat box to the right of your screen. If you're joining us through social media, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, go ahead and post your questions in those feeds and we will get to those. So Darrin, what is PAWS and how does it work?
Yep. So as you said, Sarah, PAWS, or Pulsed Alternating Wavelength System. And pretty much the premise or the idea behind this system is that if we take our wavelength that we would give to our birds, this company called Zyant has a new technology where instead of a continual delivery of those wavelengths, they actually micropulse them so fast that we can't perceive it. The birds can't perceive it, but it allows that delivery of the wavelengths of light to those birds just like a normal light bulb would be.
So then how does it differ from other systems? I mean, what if we can't see it and we don't know it's there?
Exactly.
What's kind of, how does it work?
Magic. It's just magic.
It's magic.
So the idea, and actually it was driven by using it for plants initially. And so they developed this system for plants. And what they found is that with this flickering or this alternating of the wavelength, they could drive the protons in the system of the plants, allowing for enhanced growth. And so the question then was, could they actually apply it to animal models and see similar responses? And so that's how they developed it. Now, how it works within the animal is what they have been trying to spend some R&D effort to really understand what is physiologically happening to not just poultry. They've been playing with beef and cattle and swine and really trying to better understand what are the potential benefits of this type of a lighting system.
So are you seeing benefits? It sounds like you have looked at a few things, but does it differ that much from other lighting systems in terms of benefits?
So interestingly enough, and we can let Brittney kind of jump in here as we go down what we observed in a commercial setting for laying hens, but we did some smaller trials with them with ducks, for example, and we could observe an increased growth rate in those ducks in that 35-day period, enough that you probably picked up somewhere between a day to 2 days of growth using this lighting system. The overall, in their small scale studies that they were doing when we went out to visit them, the birds were more calm. And so there appeared to be some real potential benefits for using this type of lighting over some of the other lighting systems that are currently out there in the industry.
So Brittney, talk to us about the research you've done with laying hens. What kind of protocol did you use and how did that all come together?
Yeah, so we partnered with a commercial facility that had these PAWS lighting installed in a couple of their flocks. So we went at multiple time points throughout those birds' production cycle to sample some birds from those PAWS lighting and then just their regular fluorescent lighting system from a different flock. And so we sampled them for things like welfare. So we were looking at their physical welfare. So we handled the birds and looked at like their feather quality, any keel bone damage that they had. And then we also, one of our collaborators sampled the brains to get like serotonin turnover rates, which is supposed to be another indicator of welfare as well. And then we did bone quality on them to see how these lightings were affecting their skeletal health and their skeletal growth. So we did various bone quality parameters on these birds as well throughout their lifetime.
So your research focused on that of looking at the laying hen welfare as well as the skeletal quality. And what did you find?
Correct. We are finding that the PAWS actually does seem to have some benefits, both in the welfare and in the bone quality. So these birds seem to be less stressed. They seem to be a bit less aggressive and a bit calmer in these lighting systems. The welfare, they had reduced keel tip fractures in some of the PAWS birds at the older ages. So at like 70 weeks of age, they were having reduced keel bone fractures compared to our control flocks. In the bone quality parameters, our birds were actually having better bone quality in the PAWS flocks compared to the control. So we were seeing a more consistent fracture force. So we broke the bones to see the force it took to fracture them. And in our PAWS birds, they were able to maintain fracture force over time, whereas in our control birds, they decrease in fracture force, which is what you kind of expect normally in birds. As they get older, their bones deteriorate and become of lower quality, and they're a lot easier to break. But our PAWS birds were able to maintain their bone quality and maintain that fracture force. So it seems really promising that this PAWS lighting can actually help maintain bone quality and improve welfare in the birds.
Interesting. So Darrin, is this a lighting system then that would be beneficial to not only your traditional cage laying hens, but also say free range hens?
Well,
cage free.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Sarah. And that's one area that I know the company, last I was in communication with them, were really trying to put their hands around as we look at offering new innovative systems like this. What are the benefits that you can have when you move to extensive housing systems? And so they had a small setup with cage-free hens, and they were trying different lighting approaches from where they would position them and how bright they might be or not be. And, just because it was working in the conventional cage doesn't necessarily mean that it could translate to cage-free. We know the activity levels are going to be different. We know that there's going to be more challenges in general for lighting that group of birds. And so they were really trying to get a better understanding and start to run some of those questions so they could at least figure out, do we want to continue to invest in this area of potential growth for us as a company?
Well, because we also mentioned, I think early on, that say aggressiveness of the birds and nervousness of the birds also is important. So I would think in a cage-free system, that would be really important and something they would want to look at. Is that how that is that something they considered?
Oh yeah, I mean they were as anybody that has experienced cage-free production for the first time, and you end up with all those unintended things like lots of floor eggs and some of those behavior challenges. They had that with their initial flock, right? And then so talking with them and trying to figure out, okay, what are some things we can change to have more success with the next flock? And not necessarily going in and measuring the less aggressiveness and things like that, but just really having more of that observational data that these birds are more calm when we walk in, and we don't tend to see them as aggressive towards each other. What really is awesome about the project that Brittney ran with the company and with the commercial application is we picked up those differences at a commercial level, right? And there's a lot of criticism with research where we like to be in our academic bubbles. And so we find all these wonderful results, and you go out and you try it in industry and it falls flat on its face because there's too many variables we didn't account for. And this was a great example of where they had some anecdotal evidence that things could potentially work. There was a commercial company willing to take that chance and try it. And we were able to document or put some validity behind their system and say, yeah, there appears to be some very positive things here that could be happening.
So Brittney, did you take a look at all at the economic benefits that the system might have for a commercial laying hen operation? Did you dig into some of those kinds of numbers at all?
I did not, unfortunately. Okay. I don't have any data on that.
Darrin, you have any
Yeah.
guesses, best guesses on what it might mean from an economic standpoint, or is it more focused on the bird and its welfare and those other kind of production focused issues?
Well, we can extrapolate, right? Because we know that if we can increase that productivity or increase that welfare, there will be, I'll call them unintended economic benefits potentially. I know that the company at the time was having the conversations with the commercial company to better figure out, okay, what is an economic value to you so that we can be competitive, because at the end of the day, we want to make money as a company, but we also don't want to outprice ourselves, and nobody in the industry will ever consider us because we are so far out there. So it's trying to find that balance. What those numbers are, I have no idea, Sarah. We don't get paid to run economics. We just have to run the research.
The old "I'm not an economist" line, right?
Exactly.
So, Brittney, what's next in terms of research? Do you have some additional projects or additional areas that we should, know about in terms of other things that should be looked at when it comes to this?
Yeah, I think we should kind of delve further into this because, again, this is just like a kind of a brief overlook of how the system works. But I think kind of more delving a bit deeper into it and looking at how this light like truly affects the bird, especially in growth. So we looked at welfare and bone density and like bone quality, but kind of looking at like the bird overall and maybe like looking at growth and actual like production, because that would be a lot what producers are going to care about is like the actual production of the bird. So I think kind of looking more into that would be super helpful. And then maybe kind of seeing exactly how these lights are truly working and affecting the bird.
So, Darrin, what else do we need to know about the PAWS system or lighting systems in general when it comes to laying hen operations?
I think in general, not just focusing on PAWS, but if we look at that bigger picture, I would argue that we are in a revolution right now of lighting, and it's across all poultry species. There's a lot more interest. We understand that how we have lit our birds in the past has been productive, and we have seen benefits. But as we continue to push this envelope to better understand what do they need from a productivity standpoint, from a welfare standpoint, does this wavelength over here do something different than this one over here? And as we start really digging into that, I think we are going to continue to see our lighting systems change here. And where we stand today will be very different in the next 5 to 10 years for what our lighting systems will look like for the entire poultry industry.
What about for the other species? You kind of mentioned it a little bit that lighting is something that's being looked at. Do you think poultry is farther along in researching lighting and its influence on bird performance, or is, the swine sector, or what are some of these other species? Where are they at in that process? Do you have a handle on that?
I don't. I would say that probably poultry in general is further along just because of our type of housing system. We are so concentrated. We have environmentally controlled. We're in that area as well of kind of going back and reassessing, do we need to include windows, and how does that natural light influence the artificial light we're using, and all of those ramifications. I think when you start looking at more of your ruminant side of the equation, they probably are doing some stuff with lighting, but I don't know how much they really focus on lighting because their systems are just so different from what we do on the monogastric side. And so I think poultry, swine's probably somewhere in there with us, trying to push the envelope on having that better understanding of what lighting means within that production environment that we operate today.
So, Brittney, you're going to be, I believe, at the poultry science meetings here coming up in Philadelphia. You're going to be presenting some of this research data and the results. Is that, am I fair to say that?
Yes, I will be there. I won't be presenting this exact project. I actually presented this project years prior. So I'll be presenting a different type of research at this year's meeting.
Very good. All right. Well, you'll want to make sure you catch Brittney's presentation if you're going to PSA in Philadelphia in a couple of weeks. So Darrin Karcher and Brittney Emmert of Purdue University, we thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Sarah.
Thank you.
We thank all of you for joining us as well. A reminder that all Feedstuffs 365 sessions are available on demand on feedstuffs365.com. Until next time, for Feedstuffs 365, I'm Sarah Muirhead.